today I'm just going to walk through some of the next steps from taking the spreadsheet and turning it into a GEDCOM file, and then taking it from a GEDCOM file and putting it into a database. Howdy, welcome to Family History Fanatics. If you're new here, my name is Devin Noel Lee, and I love helping people find meaning and connection through their family trees. So let's not delay and let's get into today's topic. So in the previous video, I talked about how I converted my spreadsheet from Google Sheets, and I had to use Excel documents for Excel to GED to create a GEDCOM file. I also talked about how I use Google Docs to export to a CSV file to use GRAMPs. Now, while you can use just about any genealogy database after you have created a GEDCOM file, as many of you know on this channel, one of my favorite genealogy software programs, primarily because of its affordability, as well as the fact that it can write to FamilySearch, as well as to Ancestry, is to RootsMagic. After importing the GRAMPs created GEDCOM file and then transferring it over to RootsMagic, I did find a couple of quirks that come from operator error. So the first quirk that I could see is that for Gustavus Innes, I created 2 marriage events for him, one to his wife Sarah and another, I don't know who. So I could easily delete that. That's not really a problem in RootsMagic, but I needed to see just how frequently that problem showed up with other people in the tree. If I go to other men named Innes, I'm not seeing the duplicate, so that might just have been a one-off mistake. If I go to the brothers in the family tree, again, it's a one-off mistake. I was able to get Lucinda and Samantha, both wives of Milby, with their correct marriage dates to the correct women, so I was excited about that. Now, if we go back to Gustavus Innes for a moment, I'm not entirely sure how I did this, but I do have 1 military event for him plus 1 citation of the Ohio roster. I don't know how I brought that in. It's not something I see with anybody else, but it is something I would need for everybody else because all of these gentlemen were enlisted about that same day in May 1864, and that is the roster information, the source citation. I probably need to clean it up a little bit, but it was kind of successful. Remember in the spreadsheet video, I told you how I gathered a whole lot more information than birth, marriage, and death. So instead of spending time improving RootsMagic in this case, or Family Tree Maker, and making all that information come to light into the genealogy database, I'm going to show you what I did with the Excel to GED conversion tool. So after taking several attempts to import the Excel to GED created GEDCOM file into RootsMagic, I finally have what you see on the screen here. So I have the gentleman's name. I like that I can have his prefix, that's his rank. I have the birth event, the residence, the draft residence, the enlistment date, the discharge date, the 1890 residence, pension filing, the death, and the burial. I was able to attach sources for birth, marriage, and death. Daniel didn't have a wife, so you don't see her here, but I was able to import the women, import the marriage, and import a source citation. But you can see there's still gaps. I don't have the source for the 1860 census, the roster that I want to add, and some other details as well. Plus, there's only 1 source for the birth and 1 source for the death, and several sources were providing information for multiple events. And so I like to take a source and attach it to every event it has information for. My goal was to have a genealogy database that had all the information from the spreadsheet I've shown you in previous videos. That way I know my research is accurate. Now, one thing I discovered I had to do frequently is copy certain events from one person to another, or at least I wanted to. When I was doing this process at the beginning of the year, RootsMagic did not have the copy events feature, which they now have in the new release. And I thought, seriously, this always happens to me. A really cool feature comes out after I do things the hard way. Now, one of the advantages of having a database versus a spreadsheet is when people start being related. In a database, it's easier to see who's related to whom as you figure that out. So Colonel Innes was the big poobah of the entire unit. And then he had a son named Henry Morris Innes. And I know who he was married to, Alice Drake. But Colonel Innes also had a brother who was in this unit. And he had a sister who married another man who was in this unit. Joseph was in Company K. So you start seeing all of these connections. Well, there was also another Innes in the family tree, and this would have been a cousin to Colonel Innes, and that would be Robert Innes, who's also in Company A, William Innes, who was in Company F, and then Jacob Innes, who was in Company F. So this was really great to be able to start showing how people were interrelated, and yet there's going to be multiple individuals who are not linked to anyone, but then you also had these little twigs of serviceman and his wife. But when you start seeing some people connect together, a genealogy database truly is a great tool. So should I have started with it initially? I don't think so, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I keep asking for comments. I really do enjoy everybody's thoughts. Now, while I was going through the Innes relatives, how did I know one was in Company F and one was in Company A and one was in the regiment? Well, there's this ability on RootsMagic to group people together, and you tag people in a group, and then notice I have 100 people who were in Company A. They may have transferred out to or into Company A or gone up to the regiment, but somehow they were at least at one point in Company A. There was 95 in B, there was 100 in F. This was a really great way to filter results as I was going through. I could come over here, Company A, I can take out the last name Innes, but I only have the men who were in Company A, and as I'm going through man by man and then woman by woman, I would know where I left off because I would remember the last name I stopped with the help of color coding my spreadsheet. After I cleaned somebody up, I would color code the spreadsheet, and then I would do Colonel Joseph Trimble Webster, get his information all done, and then I would move on to the next person. So I do like this ability to sort by groups. It's a very handy feature. I'm not entirely sure if other software has that grouping feature, and I will tell you later when I updated this to Ancestry and FamilySearch, the grouping tag didn't come over. It would have been amazing if that grouping tag from RootsMagic could go up to Ancestry and be a My Tree tag. How slick would that be? But it didn't work, so I'm kind of disappointed about that. But I'm not disappointed that I grouped the profiles. Now, all of these updates to your genealogy software programs can be done in whichever one you prefer. But the next step is sharing to online trees. I'm going to only be talking about sharing to Ancestry and FamilySearch. If I had decided to upload to MyHeritage or to Find My Path, all I need to do now is export the GEDCOM file and upload it and then be done. But there's some other things I want to do with the profiles on Ancestry and FamilySearch, and being able to transfer synced information back and forth was important to me. And so I was considering staying with RootsMagic and Family Tree Maker in the Ancestry and FamilySearch platforms. So I decided to take my RootsMagic tree and upload it to Ancestry. Using the Tree Share to Ancestry tool, this is when those groups really became handy once more. I would filter to a group, say Company A, and then I would go person by person and compare information to the Ancestry tree. One of the things I really like about RootsMagic is if I click on the Show on Ancestry button, it will take me to the profile on Ancestry. It will take me straight there. I really like that. So some of the first things I did was I created, using this pencil tool, I went to my tree tags and I created the custom tags for each of the units, and then I selected each one. I also added the life experience tag, which is a generic tag that Ancestry has readily available, and I did military service. When I uploaded my tree from RootsMagic up to Ancestry, it brought all of the citations in the RootsMagic format into the tree. I decided to go ahead and delete those all out and instead link all of the records that I had previously found and put in the spreadsheet, and then only have these bonus sources for the ones that aren't on Ancestry. And then I also went through and looked at the various hints and would consider, do I want to add this to my tree or not? So here's one, a headstone. That's actually one I tend to go look for. Basically, if I saw a record and I liked it, I would go ahead and attach it to the family tree. And often I just left it as a hint in the profile because I don't need to add all the hints. And so what you'll notice is I tried to make sure all of the fact information matches and all of the sources matches. However, one of the problems with Ancestry is that the red source citations get out of sync if you have custom source citations in your RootsMagic file, but then you link the source for the probate record. Let's say you find the actual image and link it to Ancestry. That becomes a source. Your sources aren't aligned. So when you see the red sources being out of sync, you could go through and update existing names and bring over the source citations. So before there's 10 on Ancestry and 12 on RootsMagic, and then I can click and make there be 22 on RootsMagic. I soon quickly found out that was a mess if I did that. So I had to come up with another plan for how I was going to make the source citations match in RootsMagic as well as Ancestry. So after I processed in Ancestry, my initial plan was go over and use the tree share for FamilySearch. And notice FamilySearch actually will have a lot more details than I have in my tree. My goal wasn't to be an authority on Corporal Adams. My goal was just to share the information that I have for Corporal Adams to people who are using FamilySearch. And so I wanted to make sure I had all of the birth, marriage, and death. I had the 3 residents, sometimes 4, that were pertinent: the 1860 census, the 1863 draft record, the 1890 census records if people were in it, marriage information, military mustering in and being discharged, the pension file, and the relative if I found that. I would do my best to share information back and forth. So let's say for a moment this information was incorrect. I could then go and say, hey, I want to update the 1860 entry that's on FamilySearch, but then I would need to do a reason statement, and then I could go through and finish that all up. The other thing I could have done, but I quickly figured out, no, this is going to be crazy as well, is I could share sources back and forth between RootsMagic and FamilySearch. If I had a note that I added, because I would find things and I would put them in my notes column on my spreadsheet and I would put it into the RootsMagic database, then I would actually transfer it over so other researchers could know about these notes that I found. However, if there's a note and it's not related to the military information, I did not import it into my RootsMagic database. So my initial plan was to go person by person, unit by unit, and upload or update Ancestry, leveraging the information that they had, the hints and the sources, and find all those links, and then add any source that Ancestry was missing because I couldn't find the record, particularly that roster. There are a number of other sources that I have found in my research, my original research, that I wanted to add to Ancestry as those bonus sources. So once I had that profile updated, then my thought was, let's go update FamilySearch, and I'll work my way through the entire database. If I found new information on Ancestry or FamilySearch, then I would go and put that into the spreadsheet as well as the genealogy software. But have you noticed anything? This whole process is rather time consuming. So I had to start thinking, why don't I pivot? I need a different method to making the ability to share my research go faster, because I really want to write. I don't want to spend months on end just sharing the research. The sharing and syncing of the trees by far is what took 7 months in this 9 to 10 month tangent. So as I've hinted out in this video, I soon realized that the person by person method of syncing Ancestry, then going over to FamilySearch and syncing that, it's really not syncing. It's really manually fixing with a few little hacks to speed things up. My tree would get out of sync even despite my best efforts. If I saved a citation to Ancestry and downloaded to RootsMagic, it wouldn't be in the standard form that I wanted in RootsMagic. If I transferred it over from Ancestry to FamilySearch, it didn't even bring over the source information that Ancestry had. It brought over a link many cases, but it was not consistent. That's the word. It wasn't consistent in bringing over source information from Ancestry to FamilySearch. So everything I did just compounded the different things that I would have to do, and it soon became a crazy mess. If you've made it to this part in the video, perhaps you're sensing I should have done something differently, and to be truthful, you're right. I believe in being honest about our mistakes when we're doing genealogy research, and I also believe we learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. And trust me, I learned a lot. I'm going to invite y'all to share what you think I should have done differently. From the starting point of, I have a GEDCOM file created and I want to share it to Ancestry and FamilySearch. However, know this, I'm going to share in the next video how I pivoted and how I decided to share to Ancestry and FamilySearch. What I realized, this initial plan of take person A and make sure they're updated on Ancestry, and then go over to FamilySearch and make sure everything matches, and then make sure it matches to RootsMagic and make sure it matches to the spreadsheet. That approach wasn't working. It wasn't very efficient. So I'll tell you what I pivoted to, and then maybe later we'll have a discussion of, if I had to do it all over again, what would I have done differently? So share your thoughts of what you think you might have done differently, or I could have done differently if we had to do this all over again. Before we wrap up this video, I thought it would be fun to share with you some viewer comments that I have received. They're so fun, and I thank you guys so much for commenting. The first one I want to talk about was for my community post. You come to the YouTube channel, you can see the homepage and see the latest videos and so forth, right? But if you come over here to community, that's often where I share some thoughts or questions or updates about new features. Before we went to Thanksgiving, I shared this post about how I didn't realize that this game called Aggravation, where you have these marbles that go out of the board and you can conk people out and whatnot. This was a game that I was introduced to after I met Andy. And then I married Andy. It was played at family reunions with the extended Lee clan. And then Andy's parents got him and his brothers aboard so we can teach it to our children. And then we play it at our side of the family reunions. And so it was amazing to go and discover that my Geisler ancestors played Aggravation. I had no idea until I was processing videos one day after meeting my dad's first cousin, and she shared this picture and thought, oh my gosh, there's this really cool family tree connection. So I asked for what some of you guys play in your family reunions, and here's some of what you all shared. Felicia Gaffney, 1998, they played Rook, which is a card game, and I actually know this card game. Now, there's many ways to play Rook, but we played this in kind of a phase 10 style, or we used the Rook cards instead of place cards. We have a family member who doesn't like to play with face cards, but we played whatever game you can play with face cards with Rook, and that made him feel better. We don't need to get into discussion as to whether that's right or wrong, but I do know about the Rook cards and playing Rook. Then it was interesting because two people mentioned a game. It's called Euchre. Now, I actually don't know how to play it. I've never played it, but my Sixth Sense 702 and Kathy Wiseman's, you both mentioned Euchre, and my granny, my mom's mom, loved playing Euchre. She played it all the time. My Sixth Sense also mentioned cribbage, and Kathy Wiseman also mentions sequence and pinnacle. I know those are common games that people play when they get together, and so that's so neat that you shared it. Cynthia, she said, my father's family played the card game Hearts. It could be played with any number of people by increasing the number of card decks. That's kind of like the game Nerds. I mean, maybe not the same rules, but that concept that Nerds can be expanded. So I like those kind of card games. Cynthia continued and said, it was simple enough to be played by young and old and those who chatted more than paid attention to the game. Oh, that's awesome. Playing Hearts with those relatives is a fond memory for me. Oh, I can imagine. I definitely can imagine. So thanks for sharing. Adult third culture kid said, for me and my maternal relatives at our family reunion, we played a game that was kind of like speed gating that they called Getting to Know You. That's pretty cool, especially when you haven't seen people for a long time. I think we could have used that. We hadn't had a reunion in 6 years, so it might have been a good big game to play, the Getting to Know You game. So I hope you liked hearing some viewer comments. If you want to be featured in a future comment, make sure that you're commenting on the research-related videos here on Family History Fanatics. What do you think of these ideas and recommendations? Was it helpful, or do you still have questions? I've prompted you several times in this video to leave a comment, but now is the time before you go on and do something else. And then, after you've left that comment, go check out this valuable research tip right up here.